Watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Teachers Talk Radio. We are live once again to discuss the budget 2025, strikes 2026, question mark. So we're going to be talking about the budget with particular reference to teachers. We're going to touch on the impact on schools and the wider sector, but the main focus tonight is going to be on the impact on teachers and how that's going to actually hit them in the pocket or benefit them in the pocket, but probably more hit them in the pocket based on the synopsis for this particular show. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you're just joining us live, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow. And also, it would be remiss of me to not mention and thank our sponsors for supporting this show tonight, which is Hachette Learning and The Bet Show. So we'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit. But thank you to them. I'm joined tonight by Joel Kenyon. Joel, how are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Tom?
I'm all right. Joel, you are a head of science at Dixon's Academies Trust. The last time you were on Teachers Talk Radio, we were talking about the 9-day fortnight.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I do. Today was my day off, so I remember it very well.
That actually hit the news. Have you seen it hit the news about a week ago? Again?
Yeah, because they looked at like what the impact of it was and the fact that the impact had been positive, especially on staff wellbeing and staff retention, which is exactly what the aim was. So it's been a successful initiative so far. So hopefully we see more trusts around the country and more schools around the country doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to catch up on that, just Google Joel Kenyon, Tom Rogers, 9-day, you wish, 9-day fortnight. It'll come up. But yeah, it's very interesting. Flexi working at Dixon's. So anyway, the budget, Joel, you produced. Let's start with your Twitter post, because you produced a hugely viral Twitter post that attracted, a lot of.
I think it's short of just 500,000.
It was a big one.
So it exploded a lot more than I expected it to, mainly because it was something I posted on LinkedIn a while ago, and then I saw the post and then I quote tweeted it, and then it just kind of hasn't I've muted it now because it's got a bit out of control. I've got some questionable views coming up, but no, I was incredibly surprised at how viral it actually went.
Well, should we say what you said? You said the original post said 26,400 a year for minimum wage, 40 hours a week. Teaching salary is 30k a year to start with. So you're telling me I have to go to university for 4 years, then start off on a salary 3.6k more than someone who works at Tesco. And you've quote tweeted and said, a teacher in 2008 started on 20,627. This was 85% higher than minimum wage. Today they start on 32,916, which is only 33% higher than minimum wage. This doesn't account for student loans or pension contributions, and the gap is closing fast. I'm interested, were the responses generally negative to that, or positive, in agreement, or a mix? And what were the objections?
So it was relatively mixed, to be fair. So before I ended up muting it, I had a few people who had said, yes, this is similar to another professions. It's not just teachers, which I could agree with. And a lot of people understanding that the job is difficult, and because the job is difficult, it therefore should be paid as such. But then I also had I had a few messages, private messages from people from who'd seen it, and then it told me that they had previously been a teacher or previously been a nurse in the NHS, and decided to leave. And the reason why they decided to leave was because there was only a couple of £100 difference between what they would have earned on minimum wage or even just above minimum wage in a store, because they had degrees. And then the amount of work-life balance that they got from that kind of offset the amount of money that they lost. And then I had a flurry of other posts about how we deserve to be paid that amount, or we deserve to be paid less, mainly because we get our really good pension, which was really good in the past, but isn't so good anymore. And then we also had our holidays is always called into question, which is a common one to knock down teachers for. And then I was also called a communist, and at the same time called a fascist. So it's one of them. It's kind of got people from both ends.
No.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Twitter is never a good barometer for the country. But kind of what I got from the feeling of the comments is it does show how the role of a teacher has been devalued over the years. But
Joel, just to sort of throw in there, and I don't know how much you know about this or don't know about it, so don't worry. But the teacher pension employer contribution rates are 28.6% in England and Wales, 26% in Scotland. So they're pretty. I mean, I have private sector people who I'm friends with, and they always get at me by saying, yeah, but our employer contributions in our jobs are like 3% or something. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Something like drastically lower than 28. So what would you say to that? You're saying it's gone, the teacher pension isn't as good as it was, and I get that because for example, I don't know, 20 years ago you could retire at the age of 50 as a teacher for a start, right? But what would you say to them on that point?
I think that point is quite indicative of what people's perspective is. So it's kind of like the whataboutery. So, well, what about these, and what about this, and what about that? And I'm a teacher, so I'm always going to advocate for people in my profession and my own job. And yes, we are paid. Our pension is really, really good. But then there's always been this trade-off. It was kind of a lot more spoken about years ago than it is now. But there was always been this trade-off that you got a lower wage in order to get a better pension at the end of it, mainly because the government got to offset that money for the future. And that kind of always been the trade-off for quite a while. And I understand that obviously people in the private sector don't necessarily favour that. But in the same vein, I should be able to campaign for my own profession to have more. And they should therefore campaign for their profession to have more. Just because my employer pays 28% towards my pension doesn't necessarily mean that their employer can't pay 28% towards their one as well. And rather than dragging other people down, surely they should be campaigning for them to have more rather than us to have less.
Blimey hell, Joel, are you campaigning for Parliament, mate?
No, I just think that is what my genuine thought is. And
no, it was very good. That's what I'm saying.
It fascinates me how people would go, yeah, but these other people. You go, well, that's wonderful, but I can't speak for. You shouldn't expect teachers to be speaking for people who work in an office, because they're completely different jobs, and I don't know what the issues are in their jobs, and they don't know what the issue is in mine. So why should I be commenting on theirs? So why should they comment on mine?
Going back to your Twitter post, do you think that that's an issue across all professions and not just teaching? This whole thing of because minimum wage has gone up, that it now gets closer to where people start on?
Yeah. So this is the thing, is I'm not against the minimum wage, and I'm also not against minimum wage increases. They do a lot of things. They decrease the amount of the government has to spend on benefits and stuff like that. And the government gets more in income tax that can be spent on services and blah, 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 blah. But it's when you look at the actual median wage of the country, the median wage in the UK is 33,000. And when you look at minimum wage, it's £10,000 off, but you wouldn't think that the median wage of the country would only be £10,000 more than what the minimum wage is. And I think it's too close. And that doesn't mean that I think that the minimum wage should go down, because I don't. The minimum wage should continue to go up with inflation, but so should every other job. And it is public sector workers, because typically we're paid less on average than a private sector worker. But that obviously would feel the brunt of it a bit more. But every single job should be asking for more money, because everyone across the country isn't necessarily being paid at the amount that they should do. And if a normal person can't afford to live on the median wage of 33,000 a year, then there's something wrong, and the median wage therefore needs to go up, because you should be able to live on that amount of money. The median wage should be what is comfortable for someone to live off. You may not get all the luxuries that you want, but you still can live.
You're talking about the median wage or the minimum wage?
Median.
So are you suggesting people can't live comfortably, or exactly what you just said, on £49,500? Because that is the median wage
for a teacher. Yeah, so not necessarily for a teacher, but across all jobs, the median wage is only 33,000. And I think,
I see, across all jobs, yeah. But I'm talking specifically about. I thought you were talking about teaching, but you're talking about everything.
So I'm not saying that a teacher can obviously live off 49,000. However, that to me isn't the amount. They don't live as comfortably as someone who you'd expect to be just £1,000 away from paying higher rate tax. They live a comfortable life, granted. Some of them are like, obviously it's double the minimum wage, but I don't necessarily believe that the level of comfortableness that someone on that wage feels is what people think or what people should want either. You'd think someone earning almost £50,000 a year and his thousands of pounds away from, like, just a couple of £1,000 away from paying higher rate tax should be significantly more comfortable than they are, but they're not. You still have people who earn £49,000 a year who struggle to pay the bill the next month. Granted, yes, they are paying for more luxuries and stuff like that, but you'd expect that to not happen when you start to earn higher rate tax. There seems to be a disconnect between paying higher rate tax, therefore you're rich, but there is people who are not far off paying higher rate tax that are not rich.
Is that, though, the reality of sort of, as the economy evolves, as the world economy evolves, do people just simply need to tighten their belts up? You know, I mean, there'll be people who say, you know, you've just mentioned people still enjoying some luxuries. Is there a point where someone has to say, not going to have any luxuries this year?
Yeah, obviously, like, it's up to people's personal responsibility to be able to understand and manage their own finances. But when you've got to the point now where your finances can't be managed, so I can't even predict what my water bill is going to be in a few months' time, because I don't know how much it's going to go up by. And I say water mainly because I've just had a bill. When I lived in London, my water bill was £21 a month in a 3-bedroomed house, and now my water bill is 80. So nothing has changed. I still live in the same size house, but now I live up north, but it's 4 times the cost. I can't budget for that. It's gone up like 20% in 1 year. I can't predict that. And it's the same with every other bill in existence. And God forbid if I go back to when I rented. But when you look at rent and housing costs take up more than a third of what people take home, which means anything extra. You've also got council tax going up by 3.99% every single year. How are you supposed to be able to plan for your own finances in the future if you don't actually know what your finances are going to be in 12 months' time? I didn't predict that in 4 years my water rates were going to go up by 4 times. How would I have ever predicted that? And it's stuff like, it's them small little changes that add up over time, but it's a small percentage on everything. So it's not about tightening people's belts. It's just like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps or trying to find a better job or eating less avocado on toast. There's something fundamentally wrong with what we expect. Like, something shouldn't go up by so much. And I'm not even talking about food. I spend an absolute fortune on food, but I cannot tell you what I bought for it. And you'll have people who earn significantly less money than I do, who cannot afford to eat what's considered a healthy amount of food. So it can't be the fact that you need to tighten your own belt, and it can't be the fact that you've got a penny pinch, because you can't make a prediction about what your wage or what your take home or anything else is going to be in a few months' time. And I think it's quite disingenuous, especially when people go on telly saying eat less avocado toast. But if you've got people who live in £2 million houses who can't afford to pay a £2,400 extra on their council tax bill, how are you expecting a person who lives in a £350,000 house, who is paying rent to their landlord, who's just put it up by 10%? How do you expect them to find that money? So it's seemingly every single section of society is currently struggling to figure out where their money is going to come from. And that's what the problem is. I mean, I highlight teachers because I'm a teacher, and it's for every other profession to focus on their profession. But there is a disconnect and there is a problem. And I actually don't think anyone is speaking about the fact that what we think we should get and what we are actually getting doesn't match up very well.
Well, let's get into that now, because we're going to sort of get into your LinkedIn post next, I think. So I'll read a little bit of your LinkedIn post out. So this was was this a follow-up to the Twitter post, or was this a separate post?
This was
before it.
Yeah, I think they were posted really, really close to each other. I can't remember which one was first.
Right. Well, this is what you said. You said, what does the budget mean for teachers, not schools? Teachers. The biggest takeaway all teachers should be aware of in this budget is it is fiscal drag on steroids. This will affect almost all teachers. So let's get into this then. What is fiscal drag?
So this is economics 101, but fiscal drag is when, due to the tax thresholds not changing, when you get a pay increase, you move up into the following tax bracket. So that means you are paying more tax. Potentially, you are paying more tax than what you were the year before, because your wage has increased, but the tax band hasn't. So, for example, the tax threshold now is £50,000. If you're on £47,000, you move up the tax band from a pay increase or anything like that, and then you suddenly start paying more tax.
Okay. So in your post, you said, before I start looking at the impact of this from the budget, I will start by saying that higher rate tax thresholds have been frozen since 2021, and student loan thresholds have been frozen since 2024, both by Conservative governments. In today's budget, however, these rates have now both been frozen until 2030, meaning the higher rate tax paid will have remained the same for almost a decade, dragging more and more people into higher rate tax. So, okay, let's have a little bit on student loans then next, because you said in your post that you have, I think on Twitter, that you have a £68,000 student loan.
Yeah.
That is a heck of a lot.
Wow. I'm really aggressively passionate about how much I hate student loans. I love the fact that I was able to go to university, but I hate the fact that I've still got to pay for it. So student loans. So just a brief, quick overview. So you would take out £9,250 a year for university, and then you have the option to also take out a maintenance loan of £9,250 a year. And that means and then a teacher would obviously, if they want, they get a PGCE. And if they got a PGCE, that's 4 years of like £18,500. So you can see how just in 4 years' time, it's quite a lot of money. However, the amount of money doesn't bother me in any way, because you only pay back 9% above the threshold. So if I had £1 million in student loan debt, I would still pay back the exact same amount of money. So even if I had £33,000 in student loan debt, I'd still pay back the same amount of money. So
per year,
it doesn't make a difference to how much you pay back, of how much you are in debt for. So again, you could be in debt for a billion, but you'd still only pay back 9% above your threshold.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I thought it was based on how much it is based on how much comes out of your pay packet each month.
Nope. It's just a percentage. So this is why I call it a graduate tax. Because
but it's a percentage based on the size of the student loan.
No.
Oh, right. Okay. So everyone pays the same.
Well, yes. So because it's a percentage, it's progressive, even though it isn't, but I'll get into that in a minute. So I think the threshold is around £25,000. So for every pound you earn over £25,000, you pay 9% off your student loan, even if it's small or massive. The only difference is that it's wiped off after 30 years. If you're on a Plan 2 or a Plan 3 or a Plan 4 loan. So, and your interest on that loan is 6.4%. So that means I will never pay
that's where someone can pay more on the interest.
Yes.
Because the bigger loan you have, the more interest you're going to have.
And the longer you pay it off for.
Right.
But on
because you're not going to touch the actual amount. You're just going to be touching the interest for.
Yeah, so that's how you'd end up paying more money. So, but that makes it not progressive, because if you just got a loan and didn't get a maintenance loan because you were living at your parents and they paid for it, you will pay off your loan faster, which means you're not accruing that interest, which means you actually end up paying less money, if that makes sense. So because you paid off the loan faster and it was less money, your interest is lower and therefore you've paid less.
Yeah.
But the average teacher, if they've borrowed around about £45,000, will never pay it off, which means you will pay 9% of your wage for 30 years. So that's why I call it a graduate tax. Now, the worst is if you're going into student loan today. So if you went into student loan today, that's Plan 5. So just for reference, it was Plan 2 in 2020. It changed from Plan 2 to Plan 4 in 2016. So we've gone from Plan 1 all the way to Plan 5 in just a decade. Yes. If you're on Plan 5, that loan doesn't get wiped for 40 years. So that means it's a graduate tax until you're around about the age of 60. So you'll pay 9% of your wage above the threshold until you're 60 years old, which means if you went to university a little bit late, you could end up paying back your student loan, but not paying national insurance, because you don't pay national insurance above the age of 65.
Yes.
So if you went to university at 25 and got a Plan 5 loan, you could be paying your student loan, but not paying national insurance.
When you retire.
Yeah. Which means you could have people who are in retirement, but still have to pay back some form of their student loan.
Do we know how much it's... I know this is a general question. Do we know how much student loans have gone up? I mean, I think when I did it, I ended up with a loan of... I think my initial loan was maybe... What am I going to say here? I mean, I finished in 2006.
So you would have paid £1,000 a year?
No, it was more. I think it was more than that. I think it was 9. Was it over the 3? No,
yeah, potentially would have been 9 over the 3.
And then there was an additional one for the PGCE year, but again, I can't remember. But so ongoing.
When student loan was first introduced, it was £1,000, and it was brought in by a Labour government.
Yeah,
you paid £1,000 a year, and then it was increased to £3,000 at some point around 2005 or 2006.
Yeah,
and then the Conservatives came in, and you've got, if anyone remembers, and this is hilarious to me, but you've got the Lib Dems when they went to coalition with the Conservatives, and Nick, whatever his name is, leader of the Liberal Democrats, saying he's so sorry because they put the student loan up by £9,000, and now it's currently 9,250.
So it hasn't gone up since 2010.
Since 2010, 2011. It's gone up by £250.
Yeah. But then obviously you've got your living cost loan on top of your student loan.
That's the other thing, is you didn't pay for maintenance grants. So maintenance grants, if your family didn't earn enough money that the government considered, they would give you a maintenance grant, and then they got rid of the maintenance grant and then turned it to a maintenance loan. One thing I will say on that is Rachel Reeves has decided to potentially bring back the maintenance grant. However, because you end up in so much debt just from the £9,250 anyway, it doesn't actually make that much difference because, again, the amount of money you borrow doesn't make that much difference to how much you're going to pay because it's 9% over the threshold anyway.
Does like, let's say somebody, I mean, they're going to today take more than this, presumably, because 30 grand would be about a 3-year degree. But then obviously, if you let's say you took a loan on top of that, let's say it's 40 grand or something loan over 3 years. The interest that's on that 40 grand.
Yeah, 6.3%.
Is that capped on what people can pay per month, per year? Or is that literally what it is and you pay it?
If you're not paying it off, I think it's only around about 3%. And then it will be, if you're on the normal rate of tax and not on higher rate tax, it will be around about 3.6% plus the RPI, the retail price index, which is currently 3%. So, and then if you're on higher rate tax, it's 6.9. So essentially, it's 6.9.
Yeah, but that interest, I mean, that interest is going to remain. Like, when do we know? So let's say it was a average student now who goes into teaching with a PGCE, who has standard loan. I mean, some will be lucky, I guess, and have parents or family helping them out and stuff, right? But the average person, let's say, who has 40 grand of student loan when they start their teaching career, let's say they start on 30. We'll come on to that in a bit, the starting salary for teachers and all that jazz. Let's say they start on 30. At what point after that do we estimate that they will actually start to pay off the loan itself?
So
we should ask ChatGPT for this, shouldn't we?
You could, yeah. But the House of Commons Library looked at this because there was always that thing if people don't pay it off. So historically, only about 30% of people have actually paid off their student loan. But it's estimated because of the thresholds being frozen that it'll be about 50% of people will pay it off, rising to about 60% by 2030. So 60% of people will pay it off before it's wiped off. Now, there is some clever manipulation. So if you're on plan 2, that rate is lower. Less people will pay it off. But if you're on plan 5, because it lasts for 40 years, then you've got an extra 10 years of paying it off. So there is a slight chance that you will pay it off. And the House of Commons is saying it's around about 60-ish% of people will actually pay their student loan off.
I suppose they would argue on that. One thing they probably argue is we're all living longer.
Fair, but people always go, well, what do you want? In that original Twitter post, I mentioned about student loans, and a lot of people were saying, well, what do you want then? And like, you've got to pay for your student loan. And I said, if someone went to university 15 years before I did, they didn't have one. So that meant that they didn't have 9% taken out of their wage every single month. That if you went to university 2 years before I did, you only had £9,000 worth of debt, and I ended up with almost 70 grand. They will pay theirs off well quicker than I will, and that means that they will have more going into their pocket every month. And then if you went 10 years before I did, you left with 3 grand. So it's the difference as what's happened, because you can have 2 people who have the exact same job, but one person takes home 9% more than the other one through just the fact of when they went to university. And it's that's inherently unfair.
I mean, if you want my opinion, Joel, I think it's a complete scam.
Yeah, it's a scam. Because
it always has been, and it always will be.
You just need to call it. Now it's got to the point. I was reading something in the Financial Times. If we carry on with the increases that we've had in minimum wage, the minimum wage payment, the minimum wage will get to about £400 of what you start paying your student loan back with. So eventually, in 6 years' time, literally everybody with a job will be paying back their student loan if they've got one. So it is a graduate tax. I don't understand why you wouldn't call it any other. And the only people who benefit from not paying a percentage of their wage are the people who paid their university fees in full. If they paid it in full, they don't pay any interest. And then that means you've benefited people who are richer, which is supposedly what we don't want.
So you can prepare for this question and also remember it. It's a devil's advocate question, I guess, is around, are universities now needing more money that the government simply cannot give them unless they were to produce a huge tax increase or similar? The way that universities now are set up, the facility they have, the size they are, and all the rest of it, the increased costs, if you like, around things, utilities, let's say, as one example, but you could give others, resources, utilities, staffing costs, all the increased costs that university has. Is it impossible without that student loan? I mean, other countries I know do it, go to university, but there's probably tax implications for that and various other things. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Before you answer that, Joel, I'll give you a minute to think about it. Just want to say a big shout out to our sponsors tonight. We've got Hachette Learning. If you haven't heard of Hachette Learning, formerly John Catt Educational, they are publishers of professional development books and resources for teachers around the world. You can get over to the Hachette Learning website. You can grab yourself a book, lots of other things, but particularly books, lots of teacher-authored books. Fantastic resource over there. Check it out, Hachette Learning. Just Google it, search it, find it, go there. The other sponsor tonight is the Bet Show. Are you coming along? We are exhibiting. We have a stand at the Bet Show, Teachers Talk Radio. It's on the 21st to the 23rd of January, 2026 in Excel Centre, London. You can get a free ticket for teachers, senior leaders, anybody who works in a school. It's the largest ed tech event ever. They've got an amazing array of fantastic speakers and exhibitors and networking opportunities for teachers. So yeah, check it out. 21st, 23rd of January. Again, Google Bet Show 2026 and grab yourself a ticket for that. So yeah, Joel, you've had a minute to think about it.
The one thing I will say is people always go, well, in other countries, we do in this country, because in Scotland, you don't pay for your student loan. So it's one of them where you go, oh, well, in other countries, well, in this country, you don't. And in Wales, it's only £3,000 a year. So even in Scotland, you don't get your living costs are a maintenance loan, but it's less. Your repayment is the same. It comes from the same company. It's just essentially the government is covering it. But it's, what do you want your country to be doing? Do you want your country to be filled with educated people, highly educated people? And do you want them to be going on to be coming up with all of these great ideas and innovating and stuff like that, and doing the things that create growth and jobs and opportunity in the country, or not? And I think that's the choice. And the quickest way to increase the amount of money that people earn, and therefore increase make it easier for them to get themselves out of hardship, is to go to university. That is the only way that it's the quickest and easiest way for someone to go and earn more money to get themselves out of the bad situation that they may find themselves in. And if you want that to be what you want for your country, and you want them to be educated, then you've got to find the money from somewhere. And also, if you look at the type of jobs where you have to have a degree, especially public sector ones, they're incredibly important jobs, like doctors, nurses, physios, teachers, etc. They're incredibly important jobs that aren't just important for now, but they're important for the future as well. And I think it's important that you pay for that. I think it's important that you invest in that in order to create it in the future. And the last point I want to mention specifically on universities, in the UK, we've got some bloody good universities, incredibly good universities. And the reason why we've got that is from investment and from the government deciding to spend money in places like Oxford and Cambridge and stuff like that. And they create a lot of money. They create a lot of innovation, and a lot of stuff comes out of them universities. And if you want that to continue to happen, and want that to happen for everyone, regardless of what their income is, you're going to have to pay for it. And I don't believe paying for it out of essentially tax of only people who've gone to university is fair. Because if we talk about what we do with society, is that we make sure that we create the situation for everyone to be good and everyone to be healthy and everyone to learn and grow. And regardless of what people think about it, if you work in a shop or if you work in a Fortune 500 company or you're a bricklayer or anything like that, you benefit from people going to university because they're your doctors, your nurses, your physios, your teachers, and you should have to pay for that as well. Controversial.
I mean, well, yeah. Focusing back on the teacher pay for a minute, it's gone up, hasn't it, recently? £30,000 starting salary. Again, as a comparison, when I started teaching 2007, 8, I was on, I mean, I was teaching in Wales at that time, but I think I started on like, I'd like to say maybe 19 and a half, 20.
Yeah.
And there wasn't hugely quick increases on that. It was pretty staggered in terms of, you know, how quickly I seemed to move up the scale. I don't remember it that well because going back quite a long way now, nearly 20 years. But now, you know, I suppose my two questions to you are, is £30,000 a year enough as a starting salary for an ECT? Obviously, I think it's more in London and out of London. So I think it's 30,000 outside London. Second question. There is, I guess, quicker progression possible now than there probably was. You know, you probably see, I mean, when I started teaching, I'd say there were less people who could move into positions as quickly as they seem to do, you know, now, whether that be outside the classroom positions as well, you know, leadership roles, academy trust roles, etc. So, you know, is this enough incentive? Is it actually worse than it was? Because I know in your LinkedIn post, you've sort of argued it is, but maybe you can paint us a picture of what your thoughts are on the 30,000 starting salary ECT and whether there's more opportunities for people to progress financially now than there was before in teaching.
Is 30,000 enough? For a starting graduate job, no. Because if you compare it to other graduate jobs, the average starting graduate job is about 38, where in teaching it's only about 30 to 32,000. So no, if you compare it to other graduate jobs, but you do get that extra pension, and I get that. However, we've had these, for example, when you started teaching, you would have had small percentage increases, and then your pay was frozen for half a decade, and then you had small 1% increases, and then only recently have we started to get 3%, 4%, and 5% increases every year. And if you were at the bottom of the pay scale, you got 7 a few years ago. So yes, there's been increases, but I just don't think it's enough, mainly because we've had a teacher retention crisis in 2008. We've had all of these pay increases since 2008, and we still have a teacher retention crisis. And as much as people want to make it about loads of other stuff and say it's about workload and stuff like that and people leaving, if you make people's lives easier by giving them money, there is a bigger incentive for them to do it. And I'm not saying it's all about money, because it isn't, but money takes the edge off. And I and lots of other people are not heavily motivated by money, but are motivated by money in the fact that, you know, if you earn a couple more £1,000 a year, you will be more comfortable. You'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And you'd think that if we're being paid so much, as people who commented on my post said, and we're being paid enough, we wouldn't have an issue with teacher retention and teachers leaving. And then on the pay progression point, similar. Why are there so many of them leaving? And I think mainly that's when the workload starts to come in, and that's when the extra pressure starts to come in, because you've moved up the pay scale and you've got TLRs and responsibilities, and therefore the pressure gets higher. But again, that pressure gets taken away if you're paid more, because it sweetens the deal a little bit more. And I just don't think that deal is sweet enough. And just to hopefully illustrate it a little bit more, The original post that I put on was about teachers' starting wages. And then someone had asked me, and I don't know how or why I'd done it. Someone had asked me about when you're at the top of the pay scale, you'll earn almost £50,000, which is true. And £50,000, again, some people consider a hell of a lot of money. But if you went back to 2008 and looked at the pay difference between someone who was on minimum wage and someone who was at the top of the pay scale, a person at the top of the pay scale was on 220% more than the minimum wage. If you were to replicate that today, it's £162,000 a year. So it's 3 times as much as what you are paid at the top of the pay scale now. And I can guarantee that if you were paying teachers at the top of their pay scale £162,000 a year, you would not have a teacher considering leaving that job. You just wouldn't. And I'm not advocating for paying a teacher £162,000. But the one thing I want to point out is imagine the difference in living standards between a person on UPS 3 in 2008 and a person on UPS 3 today. Because a person on UPS 3 in 2008 was significantly more comfortable than a person on UPS 3 today.
I'm gonna sort of push back a little bit on that, in the sense that I've worked in a lot of schools. There's probably been maybe 2 that I've worked in out of around maybe 15. Most of them I've worked in for longer than, a few months, 1 or 2 was literally, I don't know, a month, right? But the 2 that I'm thinking of in my head, you could have paid me £1 million and I still would have left. Honestly, and I think that when you're in a truly toxic environment and your head's just gone, I honestly, I struggle to see how a financial incentive would prevent you from having to walk away, because your mental health says, I'm shutting down. You can offer me an extra this, extra that. I'm gone. I cannot do it.
Yeah.
Physically as a human being, mentally as a human being. So I agree in part of what you said around, the whole sort of thing of teacher pay being, well, historically not in line with maybe other things and other jobs and so on. But I am less convinced than you that by offering meteoric pay rises, it will, to quote you back, nobody would leave if they were paid 100 plus grand. I accept much less would leave.
Yeah.
Much less would leave. But with the context of how schools are operating still and the working conditions that so many are under, I don't think it would maybe be as... I don't think it would be none. I think many will try and hang on to the bitter end on that sort of money. Right? But there's a break. But there's a breaking point for everyone. It doesn't matter how much you pay. Everyone will have a breaking point. That's the reality of life. Yeah. Everyone will, if you overwork someone to the point of no return, it doesn't matter what industry you're in or what you're being paid. Everyone has a breaking point, mentally, physically. You get up in the morning, you say, I can't do this anymore because I cannot deal with that person being like that with me, that person being like that with me, this amount of work I've got to do today, which I physically cannot do, and it's causing me anxiety, problems in the classroom, with behavior, big class sizes, whatever the issues might be. Every school's different, right? But we know that 50,000 teachers are leaving a year, and I've never been convinced by the argument that in fact, there's a survey I think they did that once you earn over £40,000, the impact, and I'm guessing that's probably gone up to 50,000 now because of the way salaries, right? Let's call it 50,000.
Yeah.
Once you go over 50,000, your happiness curve goes like this from 20 to 50, like that. And you hit 50 and then you plateau. Doesn't matter whether you paid 55 or 105, your happiness curve basically plateaus beyond a certain point of earning. Once you've got semi-comfortable, whatever the perception of comfortable is, quite comfortable, let's say, your happiness curve doesn't continue on that same trajectory upwards. So I've never been convinced. I've been convinced by the argument that teachers should be paid more.
Yeah.
Significantly more in some cases, certainly pre this increase to 30,000 starting and some of the other increases that come in. But I've also been one where I personally, and this is purely anecdotal based on my personal opinion, I don't think it's the top reason. I think workload, the way schools work, the working hours, the pressure, the behavior, the demands, I think they'd come higher. I actually think for a school leader, maybe the pressure of Ofsted would come higher than a pay rise. I genuinely think if you surveyed school, we'll have to ask somebody to do it. But
so there was that well-being survey that said what was like behaviour and workload were the two highest things as to why a person would leave. I do accept that, to be fair. Obviously, some people would, if we paid you £160,000 a year, would you stay? Obviously, some people would still turn their nose up at it and say no. Sure. But what I think that's doing is there are people who stay in schools and they find their school, and I've always found this alien, but they find their forever school that they stay in for a long time. Sure. And there's something that school is doing right. However, there isn't a way to disseminate what they're doing across the whole system because the UK education system is far too federated. It's too separate. Two schools right next door to each other can operate completely differently from each other and may not even communicate with each other, except like the head teacher knew him a couple of years ago. It doesn't move past that. There needs to be a way to disseminate what it is that's working in the schools that have good retention and what isn't working in the schools that have the poor retention. The surveys and stuff like that, I just don't think bring as much in because the amount of times you go, workload. And I think that's a shutdown because that's not specific for it's just not at all. You can go, examinations. Well, I only do 2 examinations a year. That's all I do. There's only 2 examinations in my whole school year. Granted, for every single year group, but I only do 2. But I know schools that do 1 a term, or I know schools that
when you say examinations, you mean formal assessments?
A formal assessment, yeah. So, what is it that workload that's making the difference? Well, why can't the government or somebody else come in and go, get rid of it, get rid of that, stop doing that? Because we like to say the Department for Education has all of this control, when in reality, its only control is money, and changes to how they measure things, and changes to how they measure their attendance and progress rate and stuff like that, disseminates down. But the government never goes, do this. Even the ban on phones was voluntary. You had 3 different options that you could pick through. If there was a way for the government to actually force schools to stop doing X, Y, and Z, it would fix the problem a hell of a lot faster than just doing a bunch of surveys. There are too many surveys that are asking what it is, and it all is workload. And it's been workload for a decade. And clearly the asking isn't working. What we need is someone to just come in and go, stop doing this. Stop reduce the number of Twilight hours that you do. And granted, yes, money for me would take the edge off up until a point, because there's been that I've been to and I've worked in that I wouldn't have stayed in for very long, regardless of the pay. But there's countless surveys and countless studies and countless questionnaires and all that type of stuff that are saying that it's workload, and there's no one going around going, stop doing this one thing. This will make a massive difference. And I don't know why.
Well, I genuinely think, Joel, and again, this is just my personal view, is, my sort of catchphrase in education that I've come up with in the last year or two is just chill the hell out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry, if you told someone to do it, I guarantee there will be a chunk of people who would do it anyway out of some sort of thing about it's about the children, right? It's this thing of we can't. This would be lowering standards. This would be lowering standards. If we do if we do less, we're lowering our offer and lowering our standards. Now, I completely personally disagree with that take, because I think it's about what's effective and what's manageable and what's sustainable.
A
I
burnt
think
out
the thing,
teacher is not a good teacher. You can have all of these wonderful things that they must do, but if they're burnt out, they're not a good teacher. Even if they're doing the circulating and the questioning and the whiteboards and stuff like that, if they're burnt out, they aren't going to be the best teacher. They're just not. It's when you've got, and I've spoken to other people who work in schools like this, when you've got that person above you who is constantly at the top all of the time, and everything is imperative, and every email is sent with an important on, and everything is everybody's responsibility and all that type of stuff. That pressure is easy to get rid of. I just think that's people with a management issue. I just think that's people who need.
but how do you get rid of that? You can't. The government can't come in and say, "Hey, everyone with a management issue, you're fired."
No, but what they can do. This is the thing: attendance. There are 23,000 schools in this country, and some of the schools have got something good going on with their attendance. And personally, I don't think schools should be in charge of attendance. I think that should be done by the local authority, but that's separate. But clearly something is working in one school. Well, why doesn't that just become the policy for every school? Why doesn't it? I can never wrap my head around it. Another one, behaviour. We know what works for behaviour in certain schools. Why isn't that just the minimum basic standard that you have everywhere? And people go, oh, but in this school, the kids are different, and in that school, the kids are different. Statistically, no, they're not. Statistically, most kids operate similarly to every other kid in the country. You will have outliers, and you will have areas that have high levels of deprivation, that have more of that outlier. I get that. But there will be, statistically alone, a base level of something that works, but no one is disseminating that information to anybody else. And the only people who can do that is the government. And I think this is why certain trusts work well, because they've got this thing that works in one school, and then they repeat that over lots of other schools because they've got loads of evidence to say that it works. And then they go in, they change the rules, they change the policies, and suddenly their outcomes start to go up. Well, why can't that just come from the government instead? Why do you need to hope that your school gets taken over by a different trust or a different organisation that then changes it? And I will preface this saying the government is never always right, because in Scotland, they're having an absolutely dreadful time when it comes to behaviour. And that's how they work. The government is the trust. And I get that, but we also have no way to speak into the system either. So considering you've got 23,000 schools, you've got a couple of panels that the Department for Education listens to, a couple of CEOs that the Department for Education listens to, but I've spoken in Parliament on something. When was the last time a teacher went and spoke in Parliament about what their personal experience is? Why isn't there a panel where every couple of months it rotates through different teachers to be able to get some more information about how to fix these things? Workload is such an easy, for me, I think it's an easy one to fix, because reduce the amount of exams that you've got to do. That's a massive one. Reduce the amount of admin. Make things more automatic. If AI is going to come in and do anything, make it so it automatically logs when I've rang a kiddo and logs on what I said. Surely that is going to reduce the amount of admin and reduce the amount of workload that I've got to do. Maybe it would automatically write letters and maybe automatically write down progress reports and all that type of stuff and do that instead. I don't need it to plan my lesson because that's what I enjoy doing. And I think that's what every teacher will say. I don't need it to do that. I need it to get rid of the admin. And I think if someone was to come and go and I've created this MIS that will do loads of this admin automatically for you, I think a lot of people would pay for it, because workload is not the teaching in front of the kids.
Well, is it possible to create that MIS? Because
Why
someone's still got to input and do something.
See, now this is the I don't think AI is going to fix anything. I really don't. But I know teachers who write all of their letters home on ChatGPT anyway.
They've still got to organise that though through the AI.
But why can't it just do it automatically? Why can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure certain things will happen. I'm certain of it in the next
for example,
5 years.
Your phone calls have got to be recorded for safety monitoring purposes at a school. Well, if they're recorded, just transcribe them and put them on. Well, I just don't. It's that type of stuff that I just don't. Oh, Kenyon made this phone call to so and so at this time and said this. There you go. I don't need to log it. I don't need to do anything. It took a millisecond for a computer to do it instead. I think it's not the classroom that needs the AI. It's not the classroom that needs the reduction in workload. It's everything else. And
Yeah.
I can probably say with confidence that you could get rid of a lot of the stuff that teachers going to do and nothing will happen. Nothing at all.
But this is that comes back to my catchphrase of "chill the hell out," because you captured it beautifully when you were saying somebody at the top, sort of, they might not be at the top, they may be in a middle role there, but people sort of bombarding people with requests, emails, new policies. This idea that I'm in a job, so therefore I have to create work for other people. I have to, because otherwise I'm not doing my job. And my job is a leadership role, so therefore I should be creating stuff. I think there's misconceptions about what sort of maybe. It's difficult to say, isn't it? But leadership in the education space, what are the objectives of that leadership? Well, most people would answer to better the lives of young people. That's, I guarantee, if you say, what's your better the lives of young people? But there's that bit of, well, to do that, you have to have functioning teachers. You have to. That you can't do it on your own. So it has to be there. So therefore, because if it was just about bettering the lives of young people, just about that, if teachers weren't coming into it, and I'm sure in some trusts this is what it's like, right? But not many. But I there will be somewhere it's like there are no excuses. It is literally just about bettering the lives of young people. If you're sick, get in.
Yeah.
If you've got a little snivel, get in.
Yeah.
If you're not running an after-school intervention, you're not as good as other people that are.
Yeah.
If you're not doing extra catch-up sessions, you're not during the holidays, you're not as good as those people that are. If you're not doing extra resource creation, that's letting the kids down.
Yeah.
If you're not doing and so the list goes on. Those sort of places, if it was purely based on making the kids' lives better, sure.
Yeah.
Go for it. Because you'd go even further than that.
Yeah.
Put on an extra school, run another school parallel from 6 o'clock till 1 a.m. in the morning every day.
Yeah.
If it's, if that's what's best for the kids. But, I think, I had this debate. I can't remember who it was with. It wasn't so much a debate as it was a discussion about like the good experienced teacher. I think it might have been Becky Allen, actually. The good experienced teacher in a school, who's sort of been there for a while. They're not doing anything exceptional, but also they're not doing anything negligent either. They're just getting on with the job in probably the same way they've got on with the job for the previous 10 years. Now, there'll be someone who will look at that teacher and say, oh, you're stagnating. You're not engaging with our instructional coaching program. You're not, engaging with these extra CPD opportunities we're putting on. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Now, I get it. That might be their point of view, but there's also that flip side of just leave them alone.
It's not broke, don't fix it.
To keep them in the system, just leave them alone. Unless they're doing something negligent, and unless you can notice things they're doing that are really sort of, wrong or whatever, then I don't know, just leave them to it.
Yeah, this is the thing is we often say this, and we say this in a lot of stuff, but it's like small but marginal gains. Pick one tiny, seemingly insignificant thing and have the conversation about that. Like if you go into someone and go, your entire way that you do X doesn't work, you're instantly going to, one, disengage them, and two, they're not going to value you in any way, and therefore they're just going to be like, well, I'm being micromanaged here. Would you go, oh, when you were circulating, just do this instead, go that way. When you ask this person a question, just say that instead of this. Like just tiny things makes a massive difference. And instead we focus on controlling what a teacher does far too much. Like teachers need to have the autonomy in order to feel that they can teach. And that's something I don't think a lot of teachers have. Or even if they do have it, they don't feel like they have it. I don't feel like I can do this thing. And sometimes, and I've said this about lots of stuff in the UK in a minute, it's not necessarily about reality. It's about the vibe. If the reality is that you can do whatever you want, and say whatever you want, but you have the autonomy within the classroom, if that's what the policy is, but instead you've got a coach who's on your back or someone who's constantly changing X, Y, and Z policy, on paper, yeah, it's probably perfect, but the vibe is that it isn't. And a lot of the stuff is that the feeling isn't there even though on paper it is. And I think they're the things that we can fix. And I think they're the things that are really easy to fix.
Someone's texted in, obviously back on our budget discussion.
Yeah.
Anyone who has not contributed more than 2k into their pension will be taxed. Pension contributions over 2k are no longer tax-free. So you're paying to invest in your future when previously it's been tax-free up to 60k. So public sector will be hit hard.
So, right, I wondered this
I don't
one.
know if that's true or not, but
I wondered this one when it first came out. So I've read the whole 318-page budget, which I know I have a life, I swear. But I thought it was originally on all contributions, but it's not. It's only on voluntary contributions. So even though a teacher puts in 10%, you can't choose to put in 10%. You either put it in or you don't. It's anything you voluntarily put in on top. So if you are, for example, if you earn £60,000, you start to lose the amount that you can get from child benefit. So what people artificially do is they will pay more into their pension, and that will lower them below 60,000, and therefore they get the full child benefit. So if you were on 62,000, you could do that. You can still do that, but now you'll start to pay national insurance on that money. It's really complicated how salary sacrifice works when it comes to national insurance, but that isn't true. It's just on if any voluntary money that you put in on top of what you have to pay.
Here's two questions, Joel, based on student loan and on let's stick on student loan.
Yeah.
If you were a teacher who got, say, 10, 15 years into their career and they could pay it all off, would you do it or would you keep it?
Like, would the government, who would pay it?
No. Would you personally, if you accrued for however means it was, if you saved or accrued enough money to pay the remainder of your loan off 10, 15 years into your career, would you do that? Or would you just keep it where it was?
I wouldn't pay it off. Which sounds really stupid because obviously I'd have more money in my pocket, but that money is going to be better spent somewhere else, especially if it's in a pension. One thing I would add is I keep on saying you pay 9% above the threshold.
You never know. In 20 years, they could wipe it.
I'd be happy.
I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but you never know.
But loads of people go, well, if they wipe it, what about the people who've paid into it for all this time? I don't care. I don't care if I've got to the 29th year and they wipe it off. I couldn't care less because the money's already been spent. I can't get back. I don't care. I do it for the benefit of people below me. But one extra thing, if you've got a master's loan, you pay an additional 6%. So I know loads of people who've got 4 years and then a master's loan on top, but that is paid completely separately. So it doesn't fall into the original 9% of your student loan. You pay an extra 6%. So that means if you've got a master's degree and you're on higher rate tax and you have a normal student loan plan too, your marginal tax rate is pushing 65, almost 70. Well, it's pushing well more than that. It's probably pushing about 75% is what your marginal tax rate is. That's wrong. And the reason why I think nobody talks about it is because there isn't that many of us. Because you're a teacher and you don't have a Plan 2 student loan. But as more and more people get their Plan 2 and Plan 5 student loans, and that becomes a larger proportion of the population, they're going to have to fix it because you're going to have people who pay a 75% marginal tax rate. My marginal tax rate is 61%. That's mental. That is mental. If I earned, and I'm never going to, but if I earned above £120,000, my marginal tax rate would be above 70%. Like, that's ridiculous. And then to compare that, like, people go on about like countries where you pay your fair share and stuff like that, like Denmark. But in Denmark, you're not allowed to have more than 60% taken out of your wage. But there are people in this country who do have more than 60% taken out of their wage every month as their marginal tax rate. And we talk about Denmark all the time.
Marginal tax rate, what do you mean by that?
The marginal tax rate is how much tax you'd pay on your next pound. So if you earned your next £1,000, how much tax will you pay on that money? So, for example, I
But I
And
thought
so-
I thought the maximum rate was like 40%. 40, you know, you get in the 40% tax bracket. And
So yes, 40% tax bracket, and then you also pay an additional 2% national insurance on that money. And then if you've got a student loan, it's an extra 9%. So that's 51. So it's a lot.
okay, so how do you get up to 61? Is that because
So-
you've gone up from whatever?
Yeah, so when you get to, this is obviously people who've got a lot of money, but when you get up to £120,000, you start to lose your, do you know the £12,500 tax free that you get?
Yeah.
You don't pay any tax on that money at the start. When you get to
Yeah.
£120,000, that starts to lower. So
Yeah.
as a percentage of all of your money, you're paying
Yeah.
more tax. So when you get, loads of
Yeah.
people hate getting to 120,000. And if you look at a graph, there's loads of people who've been paid this, get to 60 and it drops, and then get to 120 and it drops even more, because people don't want to be paid that much money because of how much tax they pay on it, because it can be upwards of 70%. Which would
Got you. Yeah, got you.
I sound like I'm a full-on economics teacher. I'm really not. It's just tax is
No,
one of
it's
them
impressive
things.
though. You really know. I'm not just saying that. It's really impressive that you.
Tax is one of them things that I think is really important, mainly because it's what people feel like, and I feel like people in the country at the moment don't feel like they're getting much out of what they're doing. And you hear a lot of people saying, "I'm just working to live, not live. I'm living to work, not working to live." And I think tax has a large part to play in that. And I think if you were to lower the amount of tax that people pay, it would make a difference, and completely scrap council tax, because I hate it. Complete aside, scrap council tax. I hate it.
Yeah, brilliant. Joel, we've run out of time, but great chat. Could have gone on. Sure, there's more.
I could talk about tax forever.
We could do we could do a part 2 on this at some point.
Yeah, happily.
When it's relevant again. It's always relevant, but when
It
it gets in the news again.
When there's a potential strike next year, we'll have that conversation again.
Well, we didn't get onto that, did we? The strike, potential strike. Well, to finish off, do you think that would be on the cards?
I think it would be very difficult I think it would be a percentage increase, which is what the union would ask for, because I don't think the union would go on strike to raise the income tax thresholds, which is what I think they should go on strike for, because that has a long-term benefit. Small percentage increases of like 3% when you're going to lose 60% of it anyway doesn't have the same ring to it. So,
okay. Massive thanks again to Hachette Learning and the Bet Show for sponsoring us tonight. It's been a great conversation. Of course, if you've just joined us, you can catch up on this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places. It'll sit on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter as well, X as well. So yeah, catch up wherever you want. It's well worth it. And yeah, we're going to be on again at 9 o'clock. With Seema Agarwal, who's going to be talking about teachers versus entertainers in the classroom. But she's not saying. I don't think she's suggesting that they should be, but I think she's saying that it's interesting, isn't it? The debates we have in education. So yeah, that's at 9. So yeah, stay tuned for that if you want some more chat. So. Yeah, we'll be back then. Thanks very much, Joel, and I'll chat to you again soon.
See you later.
See you.
Bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where